Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple more cards for this year's Holiday 2023 card series. I've mentioned in like recent lives and whatnot, I am now basically working towards building up my Christmas card stash for next year. So I will keep posting as I make Christmas cards because I have many ideas, many products, and working my way to building up the stash. Whether or not I continue making Christmas cards throughout the year, it gets, I get asked that a lot, and I kind of always intend to, but usually by the time, you know, the end of the year rolls around, I'm just like, no, I'm kind of done. But we'll see. We'll see, because there's many really good products, and I have not been able to keep up at all. So anyway, I had pulled out this Festive Bouquets stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. Large florals. Need I say more? I got a thing for them. Specifically this great big stamp cluster with these lilies. And I kept it simple. Rather than get really overwhelmed with it, etc. I ended up, one, coloring everything with Copic Markers. But I kept the lilies white. Which, you don't keep white images pure white when you're doing coloring. You just add shading. So that's what I did. But it made the process much simpler. Although coloring these like bright reds or go non-traditional and do like purples or pinks would look amazing as well. But yeah, my original intent too was to make the backgrounds then like really bright and colorful and then have these sitting on top. And then I went a completely different route and kept it kind of white on white. But I did some hot boiling, splatter, added glitter, you know, all the things. So these were really fun to make. And if you keep watching, I will show you guys how I made them. So my first step, as always, was to stamp this large image. So I've got my MISTI and I have some Simon Says Stamp smooth white cardstock. Got the stamp in place, and then I'm inking it up and stamping it with Simon's Intense Black ink, which is just a good alcohol marker friendly ink. And I'm going to ink this up and stamp this multiple times to get all the detail, and also because my ink pad is getting fairly dry because I use it a lot. But I would rather ink up and stamp. I would much rather have an ink pad be slightly more on the drier side than too juicy, because it's easy to just restamp. And then I wasn't sure, and then I realized I couldn't just flip the cardstock around because, again, the stamp is huge. This is a good one, especially if you like making larger format cards. Like my cards were A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. But if you do like 5 by 7 cards, etc., this stamp would be really nice for that because it's just, you know, it's a good size. So I wanted to do more than one card. So I just grabbed another piece of cardstock, got that in there, inked it up, stamped it, good to go. Because all the excess cardstock, I use that for sentiments and other stamped images, you know, whatever. No cardstock goes to waste around here, man. So after I'd got all the little details stamped, I'm going to color. And right this moment, this is real time. Then I'm going to super speed this up in editing. I'm not doing anything super fancy. Like I said in the intro, for these lilies, I wanted them to be white, but they need to have some sort of shading just to give them that bit of depth and dimension. So I went in with cool grays for this. And yeah, this is how I color. Like, this is my normal coloring speed, not my super magically fast coloring that you guys see in a few seconds once I speed it up. And yeah, the coloring went pretty quick because I kept these lilies white. If I had done this in color, it just would have taken longer because, you know, you want to blend the colors and make it look all fabulous, etc. I just wasn't in the mood for that, but man, they would look gorgeous done. Yeah, bright reds or purples or any color, really. Sky's the limit. Blues would look amazing too. Anything. Anyway, I kept the coloring fairly simple, and I just kind of went back and forth with a few different cool gray shades, and I followed the stamp images themselves. Like, you know, that's where I was pretty much adding all the gray marker was to where, you know, the stamp lines were. So towards sort of the centers of the petals, like the base of the petals, and then wherever those extra little lines were, I just went in with that. That was it. Nothing too groundbreaking. here. So another option, if you wanted to do like a large image like this and you know, don't have the time to do coloring, etc. Because my other go-to is to just heat emboss this on watercolor paper and then do really quick and simple watercoloring with, you know, whether it be with watercolors or inks or whatever, which I know sometimes sounds like, well, that's just way more work. It kind of depends on the person and what your preferred coloring style is. Another really quick option, which I also thought about, would be to just take a solid color of cardstock and just heat emboss this image. No coloring at all. Whether you do it heat emboss it in white or do metallic heat embossing and then add a die cut sentiment. That would look amazing too, because images like this, you can do so many things with. So there's some other ideas that, you know, were bouncing around in my brain and I just didn't have time for. So the other thing was when I did the gray coloring, I colored right over the stamens of all of those flowers with the gray markers. I didn't avoid them because that would have taken more time and I couldn't be bothered. And then when I was done with the grays, I went in with my two kind of yellow-orange sort of shades and colored those right over top of the grays, because with Copics, you can kind of push color deeper into the cardstock, etc. So that was fine. And then for the greenery, mixing up the different shades of green, because there's different types of greenery and you don't want it all to be the same color because that's just boring. And especially with something like this where I'm keeping, you know, all the florals white, you want those different pops of green just to liven it up a little bit. And just like in, you know, whether it's in real life or not, like I was saying, I don't follow anything according to nature. You know, sometimes I'll get some inspiration for different things, but I don't worry about it too much. But when it comes to greenery, again, that's why we have 5 million shades of green, everything, because there's literally that many shades of green. Millions, you know, millions. I'm very, yeah. Anyway, my little pop of color were the little berries. Added some red for that. For the smaller images, like the last bits of greenery and these little berries, I was only doing 2 color blends, just keeping it simple because they were tiny little areas, didn't need a whole lot, in my opinion. And then once I was done coloring, I didn't add any white gel pen, anything, because I had ideas. And I'll get to that closer to the end of the card of what I was going to do with these. So I just finished the coloring, die cut them with the coordinating wafer dies, set them aside. And then this is where I like changed my entire plan, because I was going to do like bright backgrounds, etc. And then I was like, nope, I want to do white. So pulled out a couple panels of the same smooth white cardstock, laid out my flour sack cloth. This just keeps me from getting water all over the place. I lightly misted these 2 panels. They're A2 sized. And misting them with a bit of water just helps soften the paper fibers so you get a better embossed impression. Because I'm going to run these panels through my die cut machine with the twinning berries. Is it twining or twinning? I don't know. It's late. Anyway, Simon's 3D embossing folder. There'll be a link to it with the supplies. And yeah, specifically Simon's 3D embossing folders will work in the Griffin EMPRESS machine with 1 die cut plate. I cannot speak to any other brands. I haven't had a chance to test out other brands of embossing folders. They'll need different sandwiches, etc., because they're different thicknesses. But for these ones specifically, this is what works, which is perfection. So put the cardstock in there, run it through the machine with 1 cutting plate, and then you get this. And it was just perfect. So then for my sentiments, I'm going to use the Elegantly Modern Christmas hot foil plates. However, if you are just not into hot foiling, you know, there is a stamp set you can get instead. So you could just stamp and heat emboss it. That looks amazing too. I'll link to it. But if I've got the hot foil plates, I'm basically going to use them because I love it. It really satisfies my inner magpie, especially when I use I'm trying to branch out and not just always use gold, because I have every single color of glimmer hot foil because there's many colors available. Do you need every color? No, you don't. I do, because that's just the way I am. Anyway, I pulled out, this is Speckled Aura Glimmer Foil. And my just kind of go-to thing is I've got my cardstock. This is, again, where I use scraps of cardstock and whatnot. And I trimmed down my foil. I've got it pretty side of the foil facing up, and then the nice side of the plate facing the foil. I've got my Glimmer hot foil machine there plugged in, heated up, ready to go. Once I got everything taped into place, stuck them in there, press the timer button. When the timer goes off, I run this through my Platinum 6 die cut machine. The Glimmer machine adds the heat. The die cut machine is the pressure that presses that into the cardstock. This time, I do not know why, I did not get good results. I was very disappointed. I was like, why? This always works for me, you know? And it didn't. And I'm still not 100% sure exactly why, but I was like, well, I'll just try it again. So I did the exact same thing again. The only thing I changed was I'm going to insert just a thin piece of cardstock. Like this is like 65 pound weight roughly, like just thin cardstock. And I just put it between the two plates. That's it. And then I'm going to slowly run this through. And then I also kind of backed out. So I'm basically rolling it through twice. I don't always recommend doing this because a lot of times like your plates and whatnot can shift and then you'll just like mess up the image. But since I had everything taped in place, I was like, let's just see. So I don't know if that for sure helped, but I think the shim did because this time I got perfect results. So I think it just, for whatever reason, today just needed that little extra bit of pressure. And then they foiled fabulously. So peeled those off. And then I've got my, fancy shiny foiled sentiments. And I'm going to use the coordinating wafer dies to die cut these out. So I'm going to tape those into place so that the wafer dies don't shift when I die cut these. And I could use my Platinum 6 to die cut them, but I had already set that aside. So I just use my EMPRESS because it's now sitting like right on my desk. So die cut these with the coordinating wafer dies. And then after I had done that, popped out the little center pieces and whatnot. And then I grabbed another scrap, the same cardstock, and I'm going to stamp a little companion sentiment that's from that Festive Bouquets stamp set. I could have skipped doing the hot foil sentiments and just used sentiments from that stamp set as well. But hot foil, you know. So instead I just used one of the little companion sentiments, and I'd used my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock and then stamped the sentiment with clear embossing ink and then covered it with Simon's Detail Gold embossing powder, tapped off the excess, then melted this with my heat tool. After those are both smooth and melted, I'll use the little coordinating wafer die for the sentiments and die cut those. Just like so. And then off camera I end up die cutting some other scraps, and I'll show that to create some dimension. And then for my card bases, they're going to be top folding A2 white note cards. And I took some post-it tape and I just lined up the post-it tape to mask off right where the score line is so that I don't stamp past the score line. And then I repositioned that big cluster again. And then this time I'm going to stamp it with just some really light gray ink. This is Simon's Flannel Positively Saturated ink. So it gives the, the impression, you get all the detail, but it's nice and light so I can write right over this. So I stamped on the inside of the first card base, lined up the second card base, and got that into place. Same thing, inked up the stamp with the flannel ink, stamped that onto the inside of the card. And then once those were stamped, I'm going to remove that big old stamp from the platform lid and then just position the card base just into the corner so I can line up one of the sentiments from the stamp set. So I got that lined up. And this one I'm going to ink up and stamp with Concord and 9th Stardust ink. This is my go-to gold color without actually having to deal with gold ink, because gold inks are pigment and like metallic pigment based. Beautiful gold inks. They're fabulous. But on the insides of cards, I try to avoid using like pigment or metallic inks if I can, because they take forever to dry, and I'm impatient. So that's why I use the Concord 9 Stardust ink for that, because it's like, it dries quickly. Don't have to worry about it. So anyway, stamp the sentiments with that, and then I adhered the 3D embossed panels to the card fronts with craft tacky glue, because that gives me that wiggle room I need, because I generally almost always need to just shimmy it into place just a little bit when I'm adhering my backgrounds. So got the glue on the back of those panels, adhered them to the card fronts, and then the floral clusters I'm going to adhere into place with some of Simon's Big Mama foam tape. So this will pop it up just a little bit, you know, give it a little bit of dimension, but it's not very bulky because the Big Mama foam tape is, it's about, I think it's a 1/16 of an inch, or is it a 32nd of an inch? It is super thin foam tape. I've been using this for years, but for those that haven't been, you know, that are new to my videos, etc. Yeah, this foam tape is the thinnest I've ever come across, and I loves it. Because, yeah, I can get my bit of dimension and whatnot, but it's not as thick. And it always depends on my mood. You know, other foam tapes, they're great. If I want more heft, more dimension, more lift, I'll use regular foam tapes. But for the bulk of what I do, I prefer the Big Mama foam tape. So after I got the clusters adhered, I flipped them over, trimmed off the excess with my scissors, and then this is why I did not add any gel pen. I decided to go over all of these florals with one of my aqua shimmer pens, my Tonic aqua shimmer pens. This is the Midas Touch one, so this has gold shimmer, and it doesn't look like much. In fact, it looks like nothing on camera right this moment. It's like I'm doing nothing, but I am painting beautiful gold shimmer. I will show at the end. I was able to actually like get it to sort of show up with my flashlight on camera. In real life, this is why I love the aqua shimmer pens, because they're so subtle, even in real life. But then when you tilt it in the light, you can see just that shimmer. And with these, yeah, it's gold. So it's just so pretty. And that was also why I did all this coloring with Copic markers, because they are not water reactive. You know, they stay in place. So I can paint over with things like this and they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to shift or move or anything. So I painted all the lilies with that Midas Touch aqua shimmer pen. And then I decided these need splatter, because when do they not? So Gonzai Tombi watercolors, the gold, of course. I'd already added water to it and swirled it all up. And then I put my cards into my splat box, used my fan brush, and heavily splattered this gold all over both of these card fronts. Just cause I can, you know? So once I did all of that splattering, I washed my brush out, etc., let all that splatter dry. And then for my sentiments, I had die cut just scraps of the white cardstock to stack up and build dimension. This just saves me from having to fiddle with foam tape, especially with sentiments like this that have little like curlicue parts to them, or like the little companion sentiment that is very, very small. I would rather just die cut a scrap. That's way less time than like trimming down slivers of foam tape. Although I always admire the makers who do that. Seriously, like, because it's like they can make their sentiments look like they're floating, you know? And it's like, man, I just admire the patience of dealing with the little, because I know it takes little slivers of foam tape to do things like that. And I just, hats off. I'm too lazy to do that. So, anywho. I had trimmed off parts of the pieces I did for the backer because they overlap the floral image. So that's why I trimmed off those little parts with my scissors before adhering them to the back of the hot foil sentiment. And then the little companion sentiment, I'd only added one extra piece behind it. So it's popped up a little bit, but not as high as the hot foil sentiment. So got those adhered as well to the card fronts with my craft tacky glue. A person could adhere. You could add some bling. I was going to add bling, but then I was like, what about glitter? Why not? So, pulled out my glossy accents, and I added glossy accents to the little stamens and the centers of the little pine branches and the little berries. And glossy accents is going to dry like completely clear, you know, and glossy. So you could just add glossy accents. You know, that would look fabulous. But I wanted it to sparkle. So while the glossy accents is still wet, I poured over Distress Rock Candy glitter. So this will give it even more sparkle and a bit of texture without being super busy or anything, because rock candy glitter does not have iridescence to it. It's just got that sparkle, kind of like sugar. And for those that aren't aware also, because I know loose glitter, it is justifiably hated in every aspect, not just in crafting, but rock candy glitter is kind of an exception. I don't know what black magic that Ranger does, but they've done something to treat it, and it's not staticky. It does not cling to everything like regular glitters do. Regardless, I love me some glitter. I don't use it very often because I'm just a clumsy person and I normally like knock things over a lot. But doing things like this reminds me, I was like, oh, this is why I love glitter. So I just poured it over, and I just use a coffee filter to catch all the excess, tap it all off, funnel that back in the container, put the lid on so that I don't knock it over, then we're good to go. And I let it dry. And so I've got that, you know, raised texture and glitter on those little elements, just on the little stamens. And then the shimmer and glitter on from the Aqua Shimmer Pen. There, you can see it. Oh, I love when it actually shows up on camera. You guys have no idea how difficult that is to film. Some days my camera's like, no, you're not going to show it. Like, I'm not going to allow you. But I was able to get it this time. And then like the speckly aura hot foil sentiment, and then the insides. Yeah, totally turns out different than the plan in my head, but I was pretty pleased with the end result. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post, a supply list with links to all the supplies I used, so you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.